Upon seeing this appearance, the word Joim immediately came to Zeke's mind. Zeke then asked him, "You said your name is Snok. Weren't you captured by the assassin? And what is that aura around you?" With each of Zeke's questions, Snok remained standing motionless, which led Zeke to infer that the boy seemed to have lost all awareness. Realizing this, Zeke continued, "Have you ever heard of or known the name Joim?" As soon as Snok heard this question, he began to react. He started biting his lip and growling in rage. Then the ground began to shake, and numerous sharp stone pillars shot up to attack Zeke. Fortunately, he managed to dodge in time. Snok's violent behavior made Zeke ponder. It was strange. Was Snok really this temperamental? The boy was usually known for his intelligence, but right now, he seemed to be acting irrationally out of anger. As Zeke thought, he started weaving through the stone pillars. In Snok's astonished gaze, Zeke reached him. "If you don't want to see a bloodbath, you'd better accept it," Zeke said, swinging his mana-infused sword downwards. Instantly, Snok raised a stone pillar to protect himself. Unfortunately, the stone pillar was like foam against the mana sword. The pillar shattered upon impact, and Zeke took the opportunity to land a punch before stepping back. It was strange. The strength of his previous strike should have been enough to send any normal person flying. The boy's body must have become tougher. At this moment, Snok realized that his opponent was very formidable, so he began to concentrate his strength. More stone pillars shot towards Zeke, but before they could fully form, Zeke crushed them all. Through this, Zeke also felt that the stone pillars had become stronger. If he allowed the boy to continue growing stronger, he might awaken as a tyrant ruling the world. If that was the case, he needed to end this before the boy became any stronger. Thinking this, Zeke's sword flared with light again, and he charged to attack Snok. Snok was not to be outdone. As soon as he saw Zeke approaching, he created a forest of stone pillars to block his path. But this was not enough to deter Zeke. Each time a stone pillar emerged, he simply cut it down with his sword. Thanks to this, Zeke was able to close in on Snok once more. Just as Zeke was about to deliver a finishing blow, a sword blocked his attack. The attacker was the leader of the kidnappers. "You should value your life more. Killing others will send you to hell," he said, pushing Zeke back with his sword. Zeke then asked, "Are you the one who made Snok like this?" The leader replied with a laugh, "Isn't it perfect?" Hearing the leader's confirmation, Zeke was sure of his deduction. "It seems you fused him with some mythical creature from Earth, the tyrant Joim, right?" Zeke's words caused the leader to become agitated. "How do you know the name Joim? The mythical creature name was never revealed to anyone. Where did you hear this from? My livelihood depends on this, so I can't reveal it." The leader then decided to stop talking and began to use his power. "If that's the case, I have no other choice but to use force to resolve this," he said, channeling energy into his body. Immediately, his muscles began to grow and bulge until his clothes ripped apart. Finally, after the transformation was complete, he became a large, monstrous figure. "I didn't intend to use this form to fight in front of you," he told Zeke. Perhaps because his transformed form was so hideous, Snok, upon seeing it, went into a frenzy and jumped to attack him. However, after the transformation, the leader's strength had increased significantly. As Snok charged, the leader grabbed his face with one hand. "Are you afraid of me? How pathetic. Unfortunately, I don't have time to deal with you right now." With that, he tossed Snok aside as if he were a toy. He acted in such a way that it made Zeke beside him slightly puzzled. "Are you okay doing that?" Zeke asked. "Haven't you put all your effort into him?" "The big guy on this side doesn't seem too concerned," he replied. "Don't worry," Zeke assured him. "He's so angry he's lost all sense of awareness. After I handle this, I'll go find him," he added. "Now that the obstacle is gone, we can have some quality time alone." As he finished speaking, he immediately rushed forward and launched an attack toward Zeke. Luckily, he managed to dodge in time. But the big guy's attack was incredibly strong with just one punch, cracking the ground wide open. The shockwaves from this attack forced Zeke to hastily retreat backwards. Before Zeke could recover his stance, the big guy lunged forward to attack again. This time, Zeke decided not to dodge and used his sword to parry the blow, then swiftly countered. This unexpected attack caught the big guy off guard, causing him to panic slightly. Zeke felt a bit cocky because he had narrowly avoided being hit. He then thrust his sword, filled with his mana, towards the big guy, who unexpectedly used his hand to block the attack. Seeing that his sword couldn't pierce through the guy's arm, Zeke taunted, "Haha, hitting as if you weren't hitting. Try blocking my blow next time." At this point, the big guy also prepared to unleash some kind of attack, while Zeke's sword was stuck in his arm. But before he had a chance to act, Zeke withdrew his sword and immediately aimed it at the spot where the big guy was injured. An explosion occurred right at that moment, bidding farewell to the big guy's left arm. "Do you like my new look?" Zeke teased in return. After saying that, Zeke quickly dispatched him to join his teammates. Now where did the little guy go? He wondered aloud, transitioning to Han's location. For some reason, Han began running into this forested area. Shortly after, he heard a loud noise and stopped. "Was that an earthquake? I just heard some noise," he said, observing his surroundings to find out the cause. Suddenly, in front of him, he spotted someone lying unconscious. "Oh, it's the boy from before. Are you okay now?" According to Han's words, Snok also began to wake up at this time, but his eyes were still bloodshot. Naturally, upon waking up, Snok continued to go berserk, which terrified Han. Han had to dodge Snok's attacks while contemplating how he could possess such abilities in training. At this moment, from Han's perspective, Snok was using his power to lift a gigantic rock. Han realized that if that thing hit him, it would be all over for him. Soon after, Snok hurled the massive rock towards Han at incredible speed. "I can't dodge this," Han thought. If I can't dodge it, Han swiftly drew his sword and miraculously managed to cut the massive rock in half just as it came crashing down. Even after slicing the rock, Han still couldn't collect his thoughts, thinking he was a goner. Seeing his rock-throwing failed, Snok switched to his rock-staking technique. However, due to his small, clever advantage, Han easily avoided these stakes while cutting them down on his path. It's easy to deal with things like this, Han thought, but these were just Snok's decoy strikes. His true attack was a sand wave that left Han truly helpless. This is no joke, Han thought in dismay. I've lived my whole life acting like a dog. He was resigned to his fate. However, it seemed luck was still on Han's side. Just as he faced the most dangerous moment, a water wave suddenly appeared, colliding with the sand wave and overpowering it. This unexpected turn caused the water wave to surge towards Snok. Quickly, Snok erected a sturdy stone pillar, which divided the water wave in two. But before Snok could do anything else, Zeke burst out from within the water wave. On the opposite side, Zeke had already devised a plan to calm Snok down, believing it was the only way to stop his rampage. "Please stay calm," Zeke appealed to him, touching Snok's forehead with his hand. At the same time, Zeke infused his mana into Snok's body. At this moment, in the spiritual world inside Snok's head, he begins to wake up. "Where am I?" he wonders aloud. As soon as he says this, Snok hears angry growls nearby. These growls come from Joim, whose entire body is now enveloped in a red haze. Seeing Snok intending to approach, Joim becomes more furious. Snok gently speaks, "Someone seems to be taking over my mind, but during that time, I dreamed about you. It's true that my father died because of the earthquake you caused, but I understand that your purpose wasn't to kill my father. You just emerged because your seal was broken, and my father was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. I'm sorry for misunderstanding you, Joim. You must have been hurt. I really want to go back to the days when I knew nothing, but I don't think that's possible. So, Joim, will you help me build our future together?" With a few heartfelt words and the power of camaraderie, the two reconciled, and Snok broke free from the grip of anger. The next morning, soldiers arrived to secure the scene of the battle at the mine. Everyone was talking, and the experts were searching everywhere for clues, while the two main characters in this incident were happily eating together. "Did you do as I told you?" Zeke asked while eating. Han quickly responded, "Of course, I said I didn't know anything, only that I went up the mountain because I heard a loud noise. But then Hans started to worry and asked, "But they really won't find out that we're connected to this incident, right?" Zeke calmly said, "I have already dealt with the body of the one who caused this, so they will never find out. More importantly, they will never imagine that a minor like him is involved in this at all." As they spoke, both of them started looking at Noem and Snok. Zeke then turned to Snok and instructed, "Since you two have made a pact together, neither of you will go berserk anymore. It seems your mana is perfectly compatible with Noem. So, what do you plan to do now? Are you two planning to live together?" Snok thought for a moment and replied, "I am thinking. The fact that Noem killed my father is something I cannot forget, and I cannot pretend that everything is fine." Zeke pondered for a moment and then said, "Are you saying you don't want to accept Noem unless there is something in return? Then, why don't you come up with something?" This statement surprised Snok. "Something in return?" Zeke continued to suggest, "You want to become an adventurer, right? To the extent that you sought out a swindler to learn from. So, what do you think about us doing some good deeds together?" As he spoke, Zeke extended his hand invitingly. Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to the evening in the forest. It seemed that Snok had accepted Zeke's proposal, as the protagonist was now helping him gain better control of his abilities. The best way to do this was by having young Hans spar with him. The current result was that both were evenly matched, with no clear winner. Turning to Hand, he was as exhausted as a bull, but he gritted his teeth and charged to attack once more. On the other side, Snok, seeing Hand's aggressive charge, was startled and quickly used his power to create a stone shield in front of him. However, with this flimsy shield, Hand's attendant only needed to swing his sword once to cut it in half, leaving Snok in astonishment. Seeing him standing there dazed, the two sides asked, "Hey, are you okay?" Turning to Zeke, after watching the fight, he forcefully plunged his sword into the ground and shouted, "What are you two doing? Neither of you is focusing. Another hour of training. Really? We'll die," they complained. Shortly after, while having dinner, Zeke noticed the two in front of him eating like starving demons. Surprised, he asked, "Is the food that good?" "Yes, it's so good it makes you want to cry," they replied, nodding vigorously. Over here, Snok, after eating a bit, asked, "Where are we going now?" "We are heading to Osprin," Zeke calmly replied. This unfamiliar place name left Hand puzzled. He turned to Snok and asked, "Do you know where that is?" Snok could only shake his head, as he had never heard of this place before. Turning back to Zeke, Osprin was a very familiar place to him. In his previous life, before his regression, he had 4 demons serve him, one of whom was from Osprin. "I wonder how he's doing now. I'm so excited," Zeke thought, inadvertently smiling. This smile frightened the 2 scaredy cats in front of him. "He's so terrifying," they stammered, and judging by their expressions, Zeke's face did indeed resemble that of a demon king. Time quickly passed, and Zeke's group approached a certain city. Although they weren't close yet, they could already smell something strange. "What's that smell?" "I don't know, but it's definitely not food," Hans said, sniffing the air. Zeke, who was ahead, immediately provided the answer. "That's the smell of partially burnt corpses." "What? Burnt corpses?" The 3 behind, including Noem, gaped in shock. Meanwhile, Zeke felt a bit curious and speculated, "Is this just a fire, or is there a monster invasion?" He wondered to himself, but before Zeke could think further, a loud shout from behind caught their attention, and they turned around. "Who's there? Stake your identity immediately." These words were spoken by 2 people dressed like soldiers. When Hand and Snok saw them, they froze up and couldn't even speak. "We're just travelers," Zeke said calmly. "We've come here looking for a place to stay for the night. Is there a problem?" At the same time, he was observing the soldiers ahead and thinking about what these knights were doing here. Meanwhile, the 2 knights were whispering to each other. "They seem to be travelers. All the roads leading to this village are blocked. Does that mean they came through the mountains? We can't be sure they didn't escape from the village. Let's take them to the camp. They might be infected." "Speak softly," they whispered, but Zeke heard everything. "Come with us, you two," they suggested, and Zeke gladly accepted. Thus, their group was led to some campsite, and more specifically, to the commander's tent. "Young master, we found some suspicious people," said one of the soldiers. "Bring them in," someone inside responded. Then, the voice inside asked, "What's going on?" The young man with the speeder began to explain everything slowly. "We found them in the forest. They claim to be travelers. I don't think they came from the village." "I see," said the voice. "I am Joim Draal, the commander of the army sent to deal with this village." The Nolan in front of them introduced himself calmly. On the opposite side, Zeke, after seeing the familiar face, was overjoyed, recalling memories from his past life. Joim Draal, one of the 4 people who traveled around the continent with him. It felt like just yesterday that they went through so many things together and raised a toast to celebrate. Thinking about this, Zeke stepped forward and introduced himself. "I am Zeke. The ones behind me are Hand and Snok. The small kangaroo on Snok's shoulder is Noam." Seeing their politeness, Joim smiled and said, "I understand. I'm sorry to ask us upon our first meeting, but where are you all from?" "We're from Seoul. I was training my subordinates in the mountains, so I didn't know the road was blocked." On the opposite side, Joim pondered for a moment after hearing this and then smiled, saying, "All right, I believe you." His words immediately prompted a reminder from the guard beside him. "Young master, they could be escapees from the village." Joim turned to reassure him, "Calm down. Regardless of who they are, I have no intention of letting them leave this place." "What do you mean?" Hand asked worriedly. Joim slowly explained, "Since you've come here, you'll have to stay with us for a while, because there's an infectious disease in this area, isn't there?" Zeke said, which surprised Joim slightly. "You already know. The clues were pretty obvious," Zeke smiled. Joim could only sigh and explain further, "Yes, there's an infectious disease spreading in the village. We've been sent here to contain it and prevent it from spreading further. Since you've come here, you might also be infected, so I can't let you leave the village." "I understand," Zeke said calmly. Meanwhile, Hand, the attendant behind him, nodded in agreement. "Even Master Zeke understands the severity of the infectious disease. I thought he would argue," he thought. Just as Hand was thinking this, Zeke said something that surprised both him and Snok. "So, is there anything I can do to help?" Before Joim could respond, a knight suddenly rushed in from outside and said, "Sir, there's a new symptom appearing in one of the infected." Joim's face immediately changed upon hearing this. Then immediately, the whole group rushed to the place of the sick person, and when they arrived, the scene in front of them made even someone like Zeke break out in a cold sweat. Because, according to everyone's eyes, at this moment, the infected person was lying in a pool of blood for an unknown reason. Speaking of Joim, after seeing this, he quickly instructed his subordinate to record this symptom and follow the decree. "Yes, sir," the subordinate quickly responded. Joim's swift reaction also made Zeke quite satisfied. His subordinate was indeed different, reacting with full experience. Thinking about this, Zeke also noticed Joim's pale face and asked, "Are you okay? You look quite pale." "Oh, I'm just a bit afraid of blood," Joim said with a forced smile, which made the Demon King's face twist. "What? You're afraid of blood?" "Yes, I have hemophobia." Joim awkwardly laughed. Hearing this, Zeke's eyes widened in disbelief. "No way. Before regression, he was known as a vampire with the ability of Hyoljosul, and now he tells me he's afraid of blood. What on earth is going on? Did he dare to lie to me? Wait, I think vampires actually had such a personality before." At this moment, Zeke silently pondered, while Joim blamed himself. "I'm so stupid, aren't I? Don't you like your hemophobia?" Zeke curiously asked. "How could I like it? This fear of blood has always caused me trouble," Joim said in a dejected voice before falling silent. Zeke immediately understood that Joim didn't want to delve into this detail. "Well, that's the vampire I used to know. Even before regression, he only told me where he came from," Zeke thought. He placed his hand on his old comrade's shoulder and comforted him. "Don't worry, I'm sure you'll overcome it. You'll get used to it to the point where you can consider bathing in blood as a daily pleasure." "Thank you," Joim awkwardly said, while pondering what bathing in blood actually meant. Time quickly passed after this incident. Since we couldn't leave the village, we helped Joim and his soldiers. We did our best to eradicate the disease in the village, but the results weren't very promising. In the end, they had to burn down the entire town to extinguish the seeds of the plague. Up on the mountain, even a fool like Hand could feel the horror of the disease by looking at the fire below. With a fire like that, I don't think anyone could survive, he said anxiously. Next to him, Joim replied helplessly, so this is the final result. No matter how hard we tried, we couldn't do anything else. Zeke, overhearing this, looked over at him and asked, "You must be very angry." "Of course I am. I feel terrible for the people who died from the plague, for this burning village, and for all our comrades and the efforts we put in," Joim said with a voice full of emotion. This was very different from the Joim Zeke knew before. Joim then bowed to Zeke's group and said, "Without your help, we wouldn't have come this far. Thank you for everything." Seeing this, Zeke coughed awkwardly and said, "Of course. The reason I travel everywhere is to do good deeds, just like these guys." "You are truly noble and kind," Joim said with a smile. He then suggested to Zeke's group, "We have reported the situation to the Duke's castle, so we will soon receive orders to return there. If there are no problems, I would like to invite all of you to come with us." Hearing this, our demon king did not hesitate to respond, "I won't refuse." And as if their wish had been granted, right after Zeke said this, one of Joim's knights ran up and said, "Sir, there's something from the castle." He held up a letter. No one knew what was written in the letter. But as soon as Joim finished reading it, his face turned ashen. "What does it say?" Zeke wondered, noticing Joim's tense expression. After reading it, Joim gently put the letter away and ordered, "Everyone, prepare to leave." "Yes, sir. Are we going back to Osprey?" the red-haired young man asked excitedly. But unfortunately, contrary to his expectations, Joim's order was entirely different. "No, we are going to another village that is infected." Joim spoke as he turned and walked away, and this information also made his soldiers panic. This is understandable. After all, going to a place full of disease is not comfortable. If they got infected, they might as well be dead. Turning towards Zeke, at this moment, he also sensed a certain suspicious smell here. Interesting, they sent him to another plague-stricken village. Although he was part of a noble family, they usually wouldn't do this to someone of his status. I'm sure there must be a reason here. Getting infected and dying is part of these kinds of missions. Cut to an opulent castle at this moment. Inside the mansion, a fat man was smashing a chair and yelling at the person in front of him. "Damn it, you said the disease was serious enough to wipe out an entire village, so why is that bastard still alive?" he shouted, pointing at the butler. In response to this question, the old butler could only bow his head and say, "My apologies, but he got lucky. The soldiers and the doctor in that village all died, so why is he still alive?" he yelled, throwing a decorative vase forward, shattering it into many pieces. Then he continued, "Come up with another plan right away, a plan that will definitely take care of Joim this time." Back to Zeke's group. After looking at the burning corpses in front of them, Hang mumbled, "That's it for the bodies here. The entire village has finally succumbed to the disease." Zeke, standing beside him, was also silently thinking. There was still no order to withdraw troops to the castle yet. As he thought about this, our demon king felt something, quickly stood up and grabbed his sword. "What's wrong, young master?" Hand asked in surprise, but Zeke didn't care much about this question. At that moment, Zeke looked ahead with dangerous eyes and shouted, "Show yourself." In response to his command, a few cloaked figures rushed out from the forest. They looked identical to the ones who had kidnapped Snok before. As soon as they appeared, without saying a word, they simultaneously threw knives at them. Of course, these trivial knives were no match for Zeke. With just a few swings of his sword, he easily deflected all the knives. He immediately recognized these figures' identities. Their hoods were identical to those of the assassins from before. Thinking about this, Zeke felt a surge of anger and instructed the two people behind him, "Hand, each of you take one." Before the two cowards could react, Zeke had already charged forward to attack directly. "It would give me a headache if I kept thinking about why they were doing this, so I'll just capture one and extract information from him," Zeke thought as he leaped towards one of them. However, before he could restrain this figure, the man resorted to suicide tactics. More precisely, before Zeke could touch him, the man exploded like a bomb. Although this move did not have much effect on Zeke, it did pose some difficulty in capturing them. It was the same artifact as the one used by the assassin from Seoul and the same fighting method. Why had these assassins come here? Zeke wondered to himself. Simultaneously, another assassin, oblivious to danger, charged directly at him. The result was Zeke slicing the assassin in half with one strike. Think carefully. Their goal in Seoul was to turn Joim into a demon. If I assume their goal here is the same, then the person they are targeting might be Joim Draal, who will one day become my close ally. Is his transformation into a demon related to these guys? If creating demon allies is feasible. At this point, Zeke remembered something and mumbled, "Wait a minute, if it's exactly this time, this is when demons started appearing on the continent. That's why people began calling this period the Era of Demons. If these guys are the ones who created all the demons." No, not all of them. I'm sure some people became demons naturally, like me. Wait a minute. What if my journey to becoming the Demon King was all part of someone's plan? The more Zeke thought about it, the darker his expression became. Thinking about this, Zeke took a deep breath to calm himself down and continued analyzing all these events happening one after another, as if someone was behind them, planning everything. These events seemed to be pushing me towards becoming a demon. I used to think these were just unfortunate events typical of this world. But if all of this was orchestrated by someone, then disaster is looming. If some bastard is using my power to create demons for his own schemes, then this is interesting. I definitely won't spare him. Zeke thought as he laughed grimly. Time passed quickly, and the battle with the assassins ended. He had failed to capture any of them. I wanted to catch at least one of them and find out who was behind all this, but who would have thought they would self-destruct again? Damn bastards. If their goal is as I think, they might want to turn Joim into a demon. Surely, everything will change drastically now that I've appeared unexpectedly and helped Joim. Joim becoming a vampire. Zeke stroked his chin, remembering the horrifying appearance of his comrade in his previous life. Just thinking about it made him want to throw up. It's best not to let Joim in this life turn into a vampire like in the previous one, Zeke reminded himself. At that moment, Joim approached him and said, "You're still awake. Can I sit with you?" Of course, Zeke responded with a smile. And so, the two of them sat together in silence. At this moment, Zeke turned to look at his comrade and thought, I still can't understand the reason he became a vampire. A person with hemophobia being able to use the power called Hyolyo Soul. There must be a reason that I still don't know. Zeke silently pondered and then spoke. You don't look very well. Hearing this, Joim sighed and said, Actually, I've been thinking about my father. It's been half a year since he fell ill, and he's still in a coma. I wonder if things would be different if my father were healthy. My older brother now has full control over the family and is doing everything. Since he is the eldest son, it is his responsibility to bear. Joim spoke gently, and beside him, Zeke had already guessed part of the story because his situation was somewhat similar. However, before they could continue their conversation, a subordinate hurriedly ran over and said, Young master, there's an order to return. An epidemic has broken out in Osprin. Upon hearing this, Joim's face turned pale, and he said, What? Time quickly passed, and the scene shifted to the Draal family mansion. Zeke's group followed Joim there. I'm back, brother, Joim said, bowing slightly before his arrogant brother. Seeing this, his piggish brother gritted his teeth and said, You're back, huh? Behind them, Zeke, upon witnessing the appearance of the two brothers, was quite surprised. How can siblings look so different? One looks like he's obese, while the other looks malnourished. In short, they both look like they're sick. Zeke then turned his eyes to the old man beside them and thought, Is that old man the butler? Back to the older brother, who got straight to the point. Have you heard the situation yet? I have heard, Joim replied. I've heard there's an epidemic in Osprin. It looks like you just finished dealing with another village, huh? I am a generous person, so I'm giving you a chance to redeem yourself. Go stop the epidemic in Osprin, and don't come back to the castle until the epidemic is over. If the epidemic spreads any further, there will be big trouble. Just thinking about it gives me chills, he said, displaying an extremely arrogant expression. This made Joim clench his fist in anger. But he quickly regained his composure and agreed, I understand. The next day, Joim's group began to survey the situation around them. How is it going? Joim asked. The knights under his command started reporting. All areas where infected individuals were found have been quarantined. Access to the village is strictly controlled. The total number of deaths up to yesterday is 60. According to the doctor, it is highly likely that this is a case of malignant disease. Regarding Zeke, the unusual nature of this disease made him think deeply. Is this an ordinary infectious disease? There's something quite strange. There are different types of infectious diseases in each village. It feels like someone is deliberately causing this. As Zeke thought about it, he remembered something familiar from his previous life. Could it be that bastard has started acting? The plague that terrifies the world with demonization. But I'm not the kind of person who gets easily infected and turns into a vampire. This disease is very different from the epidemics in other villages. Could it be a plan orchestrated by someone else? This means that Guy is somewhere around here. This won't do. I have no choice but to take action. Zeke thought to himself. Meanwhile, Joim, on the opposite side, was still stroking his chin, pondering that there might still be a chance for an antidote since there weren't as many deaths as in the previous villages. The knight hesitated and said, the doctors have tried to create a cure, but all attempts have failed. The doctors believe it's unlikely that anyone will find a cure in the current situation. Joim clicked his tongue in frustration, but just when he felt the situation was most difficult to resolve, Zeke's voice rang out, wait, I can create an antidote for this malignant disease. Since there was no other option, everyone agreed to let Zeke try to cure them. And of course, our main character was not boasting about this. Before the epidemic devastated the world, scholars had worked together to create a cure. Joim was very concerned about the disease back then, so Zeke had learned from him. The cure developed back then was very effective in this situation. Zeke slowly administered the newly formulated medicine to the patient. Will it really be effective? Everyone wondered silently. Soon, they got their answer when the patient in front began to weakly speak. Water. Water. It worked. I will now give you the list of ingredients in the medicine, Zeke said calmly. Meanwhile, the others couldn't believe their eyes. Just a moment ago, the patient had been unconscious, and now they were feeling much better. As for Joim, after hearing this, he expressed his concern. Is it really all right to do this? This malignant disease is extremely difficult to create a cure for. If you sell this medicine exclusively, you could make a fortune. Zeke, upon hearing this, smiled and replied. From the beginning, I wasn't concerned about money. I just hope that everyone's lives will improve. At Zeke's words, Joim could only give him a warm hug, saying, thank you so much. Meeting you is the greatest fortune of my life. Seeing Joim hugging him tightly, Zeke felt a bit taken aback. All right, let's get to the main discussion. Hugging like this is a bit awkward, he said, patting the hemophobic young man on the back. Time passed quickly, and with Zeke's medicine, the epidemic situation was rapidly brought under control. I've created the cure. Now it's time to focus on treating everyone, Zeke thought to himself. And just when everything seemed to be going smoothly, as is often the case, someone arrived to disrupt things. While Zeke was discussing patient issues with a doctor, a loud noise suddenly came from behind them. Who is Zeke? The voice belonged to the butler, who was now accompanied by several soldiers. Seeing this, Zeke curiously asked, what's going on here? The butler did not answer but instead asked back, are you Zeke? Where did you get the medicine for this epidemic? Zeke, observing the butler, thought silently, the way he speaks, is this the old man next to Joim? Knowing that I created a cure, he wants to see me. Could it be that he is ill? I need to check this out. After that, the two of them had a private conversation inside a tent. At this point, the butler arrogantly raised his chin and said to Zeke, I want to know where you got the medicine from. I told you, Zeke replied calmly, I saw it in a book. Of course, This answer did not satisfy the butler. "Do you think I'll believe that?" he said, glaring at Zeke. To put pressure on him, the butler slammed his hand on the table, shouting, "Tell me the truth. What book was it?" Zeke, on the other hand, continued to bluff. "I read that book a long time ago, so I don't remember." The butler, hearing this, grew impatient and said, "Did the book mention other infectious diseases?" "The book only talked about how to cure malignant disease," Zeke responded. On the other side, the butler fell silent and was about to say something, but before he could, Joim burst in from outside, shouting, "Salam, what are you doing? This is very rude to Zeke, who saved the people here." The butler, upon hearing this, almost ignored Joim's words and calmly said, "I apologized, but I must leave now." With that, the rude butler promptly walked out, leaving Zeke feeling somewhat uncomfortable. Just leaving like that without saying anything, Zeke thought. As for Joim, after seeing Salam's attitude, he didn't dare do anything and could only sigh, then turn to Zeke and apologize. "Sorry, Zeke. My family servant is bothering you again." "It's all right," Zeke said. "I've met him at the mansion." "Do you know him?" "I remember seeing him standing next to your eldest son," Zeke added. At this moment, Joim explained the background of the rude butler. "That's Salam. He was originally the butler of our family. He was the commander of our family's knights, but after being injured, he had to retire. My father brought him in as our butler." Zeke, upon hearing this, was somewhat puzzled and asked, "Why does he seem so upset with me?" Joim responded, "It might be because of the medicine you created. He might be worried that your influence is growing too powerful. Salam is an ally of my brother." Joim forced a smile, while Zeke continued to ponder. Observing how concerned Salam was about the medicine, Zeke speculated that Salam might be ill himself, though the exact reason was unclear to him since Joim had intervened. Turning back to Joim, who then recalled something and introduced, "Oh Zeke, I heard you're short on manpower to treat the disease. There's someone who wants to help us, so I brought her here to introduce to you. Come in, Varget." At Joim's words, a beautiful woman began to lift the curtain and step inside. She was Granta Varget, the owner of the Varget Trading Company. She greeted, "Hello, I'm Varget." Zeke responded promptly, "I'm Zeke." As he looked at her outfit, he wondered, "Oh, she's really beautiful, but why is she dressed so plainly?" While Zeke was still wondering, Joim spoke up, "Ms. Varget is the owner of the Varget Trading Company. They are very concerned about the epidemic and have contributed significantly to the research. Since she has substantial knowledge about infectious diseases, she will definitely be useful in the current situation." "All right," Zeke agreed cheerfully. Ms. Varget then asked, "I thought you might be short on medicine, so I brought some with me. Could I learn how to make the cure from you? Since you are quite knowledgeable about infectious diseases, I think there's still much I can learn from you," Zeke said. The two then began to discuss treatment methods. The treatment was not particularly complicated, just a few specific ingredients were needed. The spread of such diseases was mostly through water sources like wells, so preventing contamination was essential. "You're quite skilled, Zeke, but you're even more impressive," Varget commented. Looking at the scene, Hand, observing the rosy atmosphere, made a guess and said to Snok beside him, "I'm sure I'm not the only one who notices the atmosphere seems a bit strange. Anyone would think they're lovers. Just listening in on it, all right?" Snok nodded quickly in agreement. As for Varget, she picked up a medicinal herb and said, "Do you know anything about this herb? It seems to be good for people with colds, Mr. Zeke. You are truly knowledgeable. I still have much to learn from you." Zeke praised her, and Varget began to reminisce about her past, saying, "At first, I was only interested in infectious diseases because of my family, but I never expected to go so far." Zeke asked, "Does your family research infectious diseases?" "Oh no, not at all," Varget quickly replied. Then she bit her lip, as if making a decision, and proposed, "Mr. Zeke, if you agree, I would like to introduce you to my family. Would you be willing to come with me?" Zeke was indeed taken aback by this request. Time quickly passed, and in the evening, in the bedroom of Joim's father. At this moment, someone was pouring a purple-colored liquid into his mouth, which was clearly toxic just by looking at it. Indeed, as soon as he drank it, he grimaced and his whole body started to tremble. The one behind this was none other than the butler, Salam. After administering the poison to his master, Salam coldly said, "Sir, this is your retribution." Turning back to Zeke, after accepting Varget's offer, he was led by her to a cemetery. This left our protagonist very curious. She said she would introduce him to her family, but why were they at a graveyard? Zeke thought as he looked around. Meanwhile, Varget gazed at two gravestones ahead and sadly said, "This is my family. They all died from an epidemic. That's why I care so much about infectious diseases. I don't want anyone else to lose their loved ones to such diseases as I did." "So the mourning clothes are for your deceased family members?" Zeke asked. Varget admitted straightforwardly, "Yes, it is. Once all types of epidemics disappear, I will remove these mourning clothes. That's why I wanted to bring you here to meet my husband and child. At least now, you have found a cure for one type of infectious disease." Realizing she might have said too much, Varget felt embarrassed and said, "It seems I have talked too much. Let's head back now and work together to eradicate the epidemic." She turned and left immediately. Meanwhile, Zeke looked at her with a doubtful expression. Did her family really die from the epidemic? The next morning, Hand and Snok looked at Zeke with very strange expressions, which made Zeke feel a bit uncomfortable. He asked, "Is something wrong? If you have something to say, just say it quickly." Hand, with a smile, said, "Zeke, are you sure there's nothing going on between you and Miss Varget?" Snok added, "The other soldiers think that you two are in a romantic relationship." Zeke, surprised, asked, "What would you do if that were true?" Really? Both Hand and Snok were astonished. But soon, Hand realized the situation and mumbled, "Now that I think about it, with a beautiful woman like her, which man wouldn't be interested? Zeke is a man too. I just thought he was like a rock before." Hand's casual remark truly irritated Zeke, and as a result, he received a punch to the head. Looking at Zeke, Hand's previous words made him think a bit. A romantic couple. I guess everyone misunderstands like that. I've been traveling with Varget to observe her, which is why there are such rumors. She appeared just as I found a cure for the corruption disease, and she also understands various infectious diseases. I suspect she might also be infected, but she seems even more suspicious than that Salam. However, she hasn't shown any signs of being a noble yet. I guess I'll keep observing her. If I had known this would happen, I would have asked the other person before I died." Before the regression, the only one who knew about him was the one who eradicated the disease, Zeke thought to himself. At that moment, Joim's panicked voice came from behind him. "Zeke, has Lady Varget been captured at the castle?" "Why is that?" Zeke asked in confusion, and Joim explained his speculation. "I think she was captured to check the chief's disease status, but I'm planning to go to the castle now to get a precise check." Hearing this, Zeke connected the dots and thought, Lady Varget, an important figure in treating infectious diseases, has been captured. Could it be that there is an epidemic within the castle? It must be that Salam's doing. Thinking this over, Zeke immediately offered, "I'll go with you." Upon hearing Zeke's offer, Joim promptly declined, "No, Zeke, you should stay here. Without you, there will be no one to monitor the patients. Besides, this is a family matter. If Lady Varget has been captured for some nefarious purpose, I will make sure to bring her back safely and resolve the issue with my brother." Joim spoke with determination, and Zeke agreed, not forgetting to advise, "Then I will wait here for news. But if anything happens, make sure to contact us immediately." Zeke said as he shook hands with his teammate. The scene shifts to the butler Salam, who was reading some documents when a soldier approached from behind to report, "Young Master Salam is looking for you. It will be difficult to attend to him tonight." Salam muttered to himself. A few days later, Zeke's group was in front of an abandoned building. Zeke said, "This is the only remaining building. I wonder if there are any villagers here. It looks like a haunted castle." Hand and Snok spoke in fear, while Zeke examined the building and reflected on recent events. "Bad news, Zeke. There are reports of an infectious disease with symptoms identical to the one we're dealing with that has spread to a nearby village. Could this disease be making a comeback? We need someone with medical knowledge to go there and investigate, said the soldier calmly. Zeke responded with enthusiasm. All right, I'll go there to check it out. But is everything safe at the castle? Zeke asked while staring ahead. The soldier, momentarily surprised by the question, then smiled and said, I hope you stay healthy and return to the village quickly. Returning to reality, Zeke had already sensed that something bad had happened to Joim. It had been several days since Joim arrived at the castle, and it seemed they wouldn't leave him in peace. Thinking this, Zeke slowly opened the door of the building, and the scene inside terrified Hand and Snok. Their eyes widened as they saw the chaotic scene inside, numerous sick people lying on the floor, their status unclear between life and death. Before they could ponder further, a loud voice rang out from the front. Who are you? You're not allowed in here. Zeke quickly tried to explain. I'm here to investigate the disease outbreak. Oh no. You're a doctor, interrupted the voice. I'm not sure about the situation here. Come inside that room first, the voice instructed, pointing to a room behind him. Meanwhile, Zeke behind them had already grasped the situation. I roughly understand the situation, he thought to himself. Without knowing why, Zeke immediately used magic to control his sword, aiming it straight at the young man in front of him, much to the horror of Hand. What are you doing, Zeke? Hand exclaimed. But before Hand could finish speaking, the young man in black in front seemed to realize he had been exposed. He gritted his teeth and knocked Zeke's sword away, then immediately attacked Zeke with a dagger. The outcome was not surprising. With just one strike of his sword, Zeke swiftly incapacitated the young man. Turning back to Snok, who had just moments ago been chatting happily, but seconds later had rushed in to attack, left him bewildered. What's going on here? What is this all about? Snok asked, unable to comprehend the sudden turn of events. Zeke, understanding that Snok was still inexperienced in life's ways, tried to clarify the situation for him. After speaking, Zeke directed his sword to smash the door in front of him, shattering it into many pieces. Inside the room, waiting for him, was none other than Salam. It seemed that they had planned to ambush our protagonist. Upon seeing the steward, Zeke coldly said, Don't try any foolish tricks. I'm not a fool who will easily fall into your trap. Then, he tightened his grip on the sword and instructed the two people behind him, Prepare for battle. Meanwhile, the steward in front, with a scowl on his face, ordered his subordinates, He's truly an impudent one. All of you, go and deal with him. He pointed directly at Zeke. Following their master's orders, the lackeys rushed forward, almost as if they had lost their minds. However, they were all talk and little skill. With just a few simple sword strikes, Zeke and his group easily dispatched these fools. During the battle, Zeke realized the true identity of these people. They were townsfolk. He guessed that they had been threatened by Salam. Judging by his appearance and actions, Salam must have been infected with the disease. He was using unskilled townspeople as a shield to protect himself. What a despicable man, sacrificing innocent people just to save himself. Thinking this, Zeke turned to Hand and Snok and said, Do not kill those who are not assassins. Why not kill them? Snot wondered to himself. While the young man was still in shock, Hand efficiently performed his task. He immediately twisted one of the attacker's arms behind his back and cheerfully asked Zeke, Is this enough? You just need to knock him out. Zeke, feeling exasperated, replied, Yes, just knock him out. Hand was even more surprised, thinking, he actually followed Zeke's orders and didn't kill the ordinary townsfolk. But there was no time to ponder further. The old man was at a disadvantage now, and it was time to proceed with the next step. Turning back to Zeke, he had just defeated all the attackers in front. Seeing this, the Steward Salam could only grit his teeth and shout angrily, Krobit, come out here now. At Salam's command, heavy footsteps echoed, and the owner of these footsteps was a massive, muscular, blue-skinned figure. Just the sight of this frightening figure was enough to make Hand and Snok go pale with fear. Meanwhile, Zeke recognized this blue-skinned figure from his memories. Although he had never seen the face of the person who created the disease, he was sure that this monster had appeared in his previous life. This suggested that the old man was either the creator of the disease or had some connection to it. Zeke thought to himself, Dealing with him will be quite challenging. At the same time, Snok, who was behind Zeke, was frightened and pointed forward. Warning! Watch out, Zeke, he's charging. The blue-skinned giant started swinging his weapon and charged towards them like a tank. Thus the battle began. As Zeke had predicted, this giant truly posed a significant challenge. With each swing of his axe, he could easily push Zeke backward. Damn it, it's like dealing with a rock, Zeke thought, gritting his teeth in frustration. Meanwhile, the Steward Salam laughed behind him, as if celebrating a victory. Haha, how do you like that? Crowbet is strong, isn't he? Back to the battle, isn't he? Gathered all this strength in both hands and swung his sword forcefully forward, temporarily pushing Crowbet back. However, the giant Crowbet quickly regained his balance and slammed his axe forward, causing the floor to shatter into countless pieces. Fortunately, Zeke managed to jump back in time to avoid the attack. Seizing the opportunity, Zeke charged forward from behind while Crowbet was still regaining his stance and delivered a horizontal slash to the giant. Unfortunately, as Zeke's sword collided with Crowbet's blue-skinned arm, it made a metallic clanging sound, and the sword failed to leave even a scratch on the giant's tough hide. Meanwhile, Hand and Snok were struggling to fend off the remaining attackers. If this continues, it will be disastrous. I'm going to run out of mana. Fighting like this will definitely deplete my mana, but I can't handle them all, Hand thought. If I can harmonize my mana, the shortage can be compensated by physical strength. I just need to find an opportunity. As Zeke thought, he enveloped his sword with mana and then approached Crowbet, dodging the giant's axe swing. Zeke muttered to himself and then immediately thrust his sword into Crowbet's chest as the giant had just finished his attack. To ensure Crowbet's defeat, Zeke, while his sword was still lodged in the giant's chest, used a special technique called the Spiral Storm. This technique caused the mana to surge violently and ravage Crowbet's body from within. Back at the same time, Salam could no longer maintain his smile. What is he doing? Salam anxiously asked, watching the scene unfold. Before Salam could even process what was happening, the surge of mana released from Zeke's sword created a vortex that tore Crowbet's body into pieces instantly. Salam collapsed to the ground, stunned and helpless, as the entire floor of the building was obliterated by Zeke's attack. Zeke sheathed his sword slowly and addressed Salam. You, the one behind spreading the disease, looking at the weapons of your assassins, they're identical to those used by the ones who kidnapped Snok. What's your connection to the man in the black cloak? Salam gritted his teeth and retorted, Why should I tell you? Everything I've done is a punishment for them. Punishment? Yes, indeed. Just a little more and the Draal family would be finished. Your interference has ruined my plan. I should have dealt with you first. His face twisted with anger. Salam pulled a vial of poison from his pocket and continued boasting. But it's too late for you. Even if you escape from here, it won't matter. My plan at the chieftain's castle is already a success. After saying that, the man threw the bottle he was holding down, causing it to release a cloud of smoke that obscured everyone's vision. Hand and Snok, seeing this, feared it might be toxic gas and quickly covered their mouths. However, Zeke immediately explained to them, It's just a smoke bomb. Don't worry. Hand then asked, Do we need to chase after him? No need. They have already taken control of the castle, Zeke said calmly. Meanwhile, Joim, who had boasted about handling everything, was now imprisoned. Turning to his group, Zeke said, We need to get to the Lord's castle immediately. Yes, sir, the two replied urgently. Zeke thought to himself that the situation had likely changed. Zeke was thinking while looking at the corpses lying below. Coincidentally, he noticed a certain mark on one of the bodies. The scene shifts to the dungeon of the Draal castle. At this moment, Joim was cursing his brother, Bjorn Brakul. How dare you imprison me in a dungeon? How did they manage to take over the Lord's castle? I had confidently declared that I would bring back Lady Varget. This is truly pathetic. Now I can't even protect my own life, Joim thought, feeling disheartened. Just then, a voice echoed from outside. Joim, you've worked hard. Zeke, upon hearing this, looked sternly towards the corridor and said, How dare you step into a dangerous criminal's cell? The mysterious figure outside, seeing Joim's expression, praised him. Excellent. Even now, your eyes haven't given up, huh? Enough with the small talk. Let's get straight to the point. Joim replied coldly, go ahead. The mysterious figure then reached into his sleeve and pulled out a fruit that resembled a devil's fruit. He said, I am here to help you. This is called blood essence. Absorb it, and you will gain a formidable power. Your brother wants to kill you. Use this power to destroy all those who follow his orders. Returning to Joim, although the mysterious figure's offer was highly tempting, Joim remained resolute and refused, saying, I won't do it. Do you know who I am, asking me to swallow that? I'm not foolish enough to listen to someone I don't even know. Joim's refusal made the mysterious figure clench his fists, contemplating that if things had gone according to plan, Joim would be consumed by hatred now. The figure was ready to use the blood essence for revenge, but perhaps the creator of the antidote to the plague was the reason Joim wasn't as enraged as he had anticipated. Thinking of this, the figure came up with a new scheme and began to boast. To be honest with you, Joim, there is someone behind the scenes who can control infectious diseases as they please. Isn't it strange how the plague suddenly appeared and spread everywhere? The pandemic outbreaks are all caused by him. He and your brother have conspired together with the sole purpose of killing you. Joim has devastated the surrounding villages with the plague just to kill one person. Naturally, Osprey, where the Lord's castle is located, only had the weakest strain of the plague, which led to the current outbreak. That's why he has imprisoned you here. If he can't kill you, all his efforts will be in vain. So will you agree now? Knowing everything, are you still not changing your mind? The figure spoke with a sly smile, while Joim gripped the bars of the cell and grit his teeth, saying, aren't you an ally of my brother? The mysterious figure responded cheerfully, I only ally with him when necessary, not permanently. During Brekul becoming the Count of Draal is just a matter of time before Osprey, and indeed the whole world turns into hell. You are the only key to changing that. But you don't want to seize this opportunity? I will help you. If you want to save everything, quickly absorb this blood essence. As he spoke, the figure held the devil's fruit in front of Joim. Joim was truly wavering now, and his hand slowly reached toward the blood essence. But fortunately, at the moment when everything was about to succeed, Zeke's voice rang out from behind. His plan seems to be working well, but do you want to sell it to me? Facing Zeke, the mysterious figure, upon seeing Zeke appear, clicked his tongue in annoyance and quickly hid the devil's fruit. Meanwhile, Zeke, still in front, cheerfully tried to persuade him. I want to know more about this blood essence. Can you explain it to me in detail? The mysterious figure coldly replied, even if I told you, you wouldn't understand. Zeke with a smile said, don't say that. Have some pity on me. Because of the attack from your people, I've been quite injured. The mysterious figure showed no concern, responding coldly, I don't care. This indifference made Zeke a bit frustrated. Talking to such straightforward people is really boring. The ally of yours I met earlier wasn't so dull. After meeting your ally, I figured everything out. You're an organization wanting to capture some people and turn them into demons, right? And the one being turned into a demon this time will be Joim, correct? It's surely through absorbing the blood essence in your hand. The more Zeke spoke, the paler the mysterious figure's face became because Zeke had accurately guessed their plan. With things reaching this point, the figure thought he had no other choice. He clenched his fists, while Zeke's gaze became colder. Really tight-lipped, Zeke thought to himself, I probably can't extract any more information from this guy. Maybe it's best to let him go now. Just as Zeke was about to act, loud noises erupted from behind. Seeing this, the mysterious figure looked pleased. You all stay here and wait to die, he thought happily. Meanwhile, Joim, who was imprisoned inside, had a bit of a guess. Is that the sound of Dorn's reinforcements? But contrary to the thoughts of these two, the newcomers were actually Hand and his group. As soon as they entered, Hand called out loudly, Zeke, we've taken control of the entire castle and the dungeon. On the other hand, the mysterious figure, who had been so pleased moments ago, now looked as if he had been bitten by a dog. Seeing this, Zeke couldn't help but taunt him. What's wrong? It seems your efforts were in vain. Things aren't going as you hoped, huh? How does it feel to have a fleeting glimmer of hope at the last moment? Is it sweet? With a playful grin, Zeke continued to mock him. The mysterious figure, realizing that he could no longer count on reinforcements, immediately turned to flee. But how could he escape from all these people? As soon as he turned, Zeke called out to Snok, "Do it!" Snok immediately used his skills to cause a massive amount of debris from the ceiling to collapse, burying the mysterious figure and leaving his fate unknown. It was uncertain whether the devil's fruit had been destroyed along with him. "Terrible," Zeke remarked, looking at the wreckage. One of Joim's close knights, seeing this, said in a panic, "Lord Joim, but he's worrying a bit too much." Snok had anticipated this, and had created a stone goblin to protect the young man. "Well done with the blood magic," Snok praised, then turned to Joim and asked, "Are you all right?" "I'm fine. Luckily, I wasn't injured anywhere," Joim calmly responded. Seeing this, Zeke suggested, "Then let's go." Joim replied, "Now I want to punish my brother, who is the mastermind behind this." "All right, but is Master Bjorn really the mastermind?" Zeke asked. The group quickly moved towards the Lord's chamber. At this moment, Zeke looked at Joim and thought, before his rebirth, I had never seen how he commanded Joim's army. If it weren't for this illness, the position of heir would have already been his. As the protagonist was thinking this, they arrived at the Lord's office and found the Steward Salam inside. "Salam, why are you here? Where is my brother?" Joim demanded. Despite being surrounded, Salam remained calm and smiled. "Seeing you here, it seems that fool has failed. You're still alive and helping Joim, huh?" Joim started to piece things together and said, "Salam, are you the one behind all this? Are you the one who spread the plague?" "Now you realize," Salam replied. "Yes, it was me. And it was also me who caused your father to fall ill. All of this was to exact revenge on your family." Salam spoke and laughed maniacally, but this left Joim somewhat confused. Revenge? But Lady Varget is not related to this. Where is she? Meanwhile, Zeke, after hearing this, explained for Salam, "It's not like that, young master. He is not the true mastermind. The real culprit behind the spread of the plague is." But before he could finish his sentence, a voice came from behind the group. "Just as Mr. Salam predicted, you're still alive, Zeke." The voice belonged to Varget. Seeing her appearance, Joim was bewildered and turned to Zeke, asking, "Zeke, is it really Lady Varget who is the true culprit you mentioned?" "Yes, that's right. Lady Varget is the mastermind behind the plague, and Salam is her subordinate," Zeke confirmed. Hearing this, Joim could no longer contain his rage and shouted, "How could you repay my father's kindness with revenge? What is going on, Salam?" Salam, on the opposite side, shouted, "Joim, do you know what your father did when he held the power of the Lord? 10 years ago, there was an outbreak of disease here. Your father did everything he could to stop the disease, and he actually succeeded. But shortly afterward, because of that, he had to shoulder a huge debt. Your father was under immense financial pressure, so he started targeting those he owed money to and infected them with the disease." "No, my father wasn't like that," Joim said in confusion. Salam continued, "Many people trusted him and lent him a large sum of money, and in the end, they all died from the disease. The only friend I had, the husband of Lady Varget, also became one of his victims. Therefore, I vowed to punish your family, along with the wife of my deceased friend." After Lady Varget finished speaking, Salam readied himself to attack. But before he could make a move, Zeke on the opposite side lazily twirled his ear and said, "All this nonsense, old man. If you want revenge, at least think it through. The innocent villagers have no grudge against you. Why harm them? As you said, just punishing his family would have been enough. The villagers are just ignorant fools who praised Count Draal without knowing anything. That's their sin." Salam coldly replied, and his words nearly made Zeke laugh. "As far as I'm concerned, you're no different from him." On the opposite side, the old man Salam's face darkened, and he began to lose control. "You know nothing. People like you have no right to judge me." He said this as he started channeling energy into his sword and charged at Zeke like a rabid dog. Seeing this, Zeke immediately crouched slightly and assumed a combat stance. But before Salam could reach him, Zeke stared in surprise as the butler was impaled from behind by someone he had trusted. As he was about to log out, he still couldn't understand why she had done this to him. Varget coldly replied, "Perhaps you've misunderstood. I'm not seeking revenge, Mr. Salam. I simply wanted as many people as possible to contract the disease. Isn't there another reason besides revenge?" Zeke, curious, asked, "Is that so?" Lady Varget then explained calmly, "Of course. It wasn't until my family contracted the infectious disease that I discovered the reason. Everything happened so suddenly. My husband and child, who were perfectly fine yesterday, suddenly developed a high fever and started vomiting blood. Since it was so contagious, even doctors didn't want to come near. I had to endure the fear of spreading the disease while taking care of my husband and child. Because I loved them so much, I looked at them hundreds of times a day, watching their faces grow increasingly gaunt and pale. At that moment, a thought suddenly crossed my mind. How beautiful the faces of those who die from disease are. I silently thanked Count Draal for helping me see that wonderful beauty." As Varget spoke, she revealed an extremely excited expression, but the soldiers on the opposite side could no longer tolerate it. "We can't listen to her any longer, young master. Please give the order. We need to capture this crazy woman. How can she see her dying husband as a source of amusement?" The knight said this while gripping his sword tightly, as if waiting for Joim's command. He was ready to charge and tear Varget to pieces at a single shout from Joim. But despite the threat from the group, Lady Varget could still smile and say, "Haha, you still don't realize. Why do you think I did this without any preparation?" Joim, upon hearing this, sternly asked, "What kind of devilish game are you playing? The people infected with the disease in Osprin are all suffering from a disease called demonization, right?" Calmly, Varget responded, "Yes, that's correct." Joim, realizing something, asked, "So, did you take them hostage?" "Talking to someone smart is quite enjoyable," Varget said with a smile, confirming the notion. However, Joim still had some doubts. "Who are they?" Varget then smiled maniacally and answered, "All the citizens of Osprin." "You infected all of them?" Joim asked in shock. "Don't you remember? My specialty is researching infectious diseases," Varget replied with a grin. This revelation left Joim helpless, and he could only shout in frustration, "Damn it!" Turning to Varget, after seeing Joim's expression, she began to address the main issue. "All right, let's negotiate." But before she could finish her sentence, Zeke's cold voice rang out, "That's enough, let's end this now." With that, Zeke drew his sword and prepared to eliminate the mastermind, which caused Varget, who stood opposite him, to be somewhat confused and say, "Zeke, I never thought you would be this foolish. Don't you believe I did that?" "No, I believe what you said," Zeke calmly replied, and his response made Varget even more puzzled. "So you intend to sacrifice all the people of Osprina?" "Yes, if I have to choose, I will sacrifice Osprina to kill you," Zeke declared, which shocked his attendant hand beside him. "Zeke, didn't you want to save everyone? Why are you doing this?" Zeke turned to look at him and explained, "Yes, to save everyone, I need to deal with Lady Varget. But if you do that, all the citizens of Osprina will die," Hand hurriedly said. But Zeke gave a harsh response. "That is an unavoidable sacrifice. Hand, this may be cruel to you, but people will always face crossroads in their choices. In the future, there will be situations like this. If you want to become a warrior, you must make decisions even if they bring sorrow. If she escapes, do you think she will run up the mountain? Or will she wander around spreading the plague? The number of people who will die will be many times more than the citizens of Osprina. Moreover, I said I wanted a good life, but I didn't say no one would have to sacrifice." Zeke said it as he pointed his sword forward with determination. Meanwhile, Varget on the opposite side began to play the emotional card. "In the end, you still want to kill me." "That's right," Zeke said with a smile, but at that moment, Joim stepped forward and tried to dissuade him. "Zeke, no matter what, you cannot sacrifice the people of Osprina. Don't worry, young master, because the citizens have been secured. Joim heard this and was overjoyed, saying, "Ah, that's how it should be. How could Zeke do such a thing?" But before he could relish in his relief for a few seconds, Zeke asked with a serious tone, "But there is one thing I am serious about. If you had to choose between the citizens and Lady Varget, which would you abandon?" "What are you talking about?" Joim said, surprised. Zeke slowly began to explain everything. "There is one thing not in her plan. The citizens have been treated. Are you all right, my lady? Is that brief moment of hope at the last moment sweet?" he said with a devilish smile. His words made Varget unable to maintain her calm demeanor. "You lie. How could that be?" she said, her voice full of panic. Zeke then started to enlighten her. "The infectious disease you caused leaves a red mark behind the ear, and the name of this disease is Galderm. I first learned about it through the people you control near here. On the way to the Lord's castle, I saw the villagers of Osprey with the same red mark behind their ears, so before coming here, I treated them." Opposite him, Varget regained her confidence and asserted, "Even if you knew about it, you couldn't have treated everyone. Ginseng root, which is in the cure for Galderm, is a very rare herb. You couldn't have enough medicine to treat all the citizens." Hearing her, Zeke scratched his ear and said, "Ginseng root? I just used a kind of grass. It's a purple weed that grows by the roadside, also known as a wild herb. So the medicine to cure this disease isn't hard to find. It grows abundantly." Hearing this, Varget lost her composure once again and screamed, "You're lying. The disease I created can't be cured with wild herbs. Do you think you're that great?" Zeke said disdainfully, while thinking to himself that the herb was very effective in treating the plague. Back to Varget, she regained some composure and said, "Fine, even if you created a cure, how could you treat all the citizens of Osprey in half a day?" Zeke, hearing this, smiled and said, "I did it secretly. Didn't you know? The medicine is in liquid form and almost tasteless." Varget, upon hearing this, remembered her previous conversations with Zeke and thought about keeping the disease from spreading, which was due to the water source at the Umbrella Ruins. "We should start from there," she had said. Realizing this, her face turned pale and she said, "Could it be?" Zeke, seeing her reaction, nodded and said, "That's right. I put the medicine in the well. I informed the people there about the disease you were spreading and created a medicine just before coming to the Lord's castle. People confirmed that those who drank the medicine saw the red spots disappear. I'm sure everyone has been cured. Of course, I can't say that every citizen has recovered, but that alone is enough for me to kill you." Turning to Varget, she realized she had lost. "I didn't expect you to be such a significant obstacle," she said. "All my enemies think that," Zeke admitted. "Well, then, there's no other way. I didn't want to do this," Varget said, pulling out a vial of purple liquid. She smashed the vial, and the liquid began to cover her arm. To everyone's surprise, Varget's body was enveloped in black smoke. When the smoke cleared, Varget appeared in a completely different form. "A witch!" someone exclaimed in shock. Immediately, the group began to fight as Joim ordered, "Capture the witch now." The knights, without hesitation, charged forward. Seeing this, Varget transformed one of her arms into a plant-like form and thrust it forward. However, a brown-haired knight easily swung his sword and severed the vine arm. "Die, witch!" he shouted, but before he could take further action, his body suddenly stiffened, and he collapsed to his knees, much to the bewilderment of those around him. Varget, upon seeing this scene, also chuckled with satisfaction. "This is a special type of blood. Soon, those red spots will cover your face. Then you will cough up blood and die in agony." Turning towards Zeke, after hearing Varget say that, he was also afraid. "Damn, this is, if anyone touches the blood of the sick person, they will also be infected, right?" After thinking this through, Zeke quickly shouted to Joim, "We need to evacuate everyone immediately. Hand Snok, both of you, go out and evacuate everyone out of the castle immediately." Joim, upon hearing this, also glanced towards his father, along with his older brother, the rotten pig, then gritted his teeth and said, "All soldiers evacuate immediately. Knights, fight the witch, but do not touch her blood." Zeke, you also step back. Joim said while starting to leave this place. Meanwhile, on the opposite side, Varget saw the group leaving and did not stop them. Instead, she began to focus more on Zeke. "Oh my, Zeke, you intend to confront me, huh?" she said, while controlling her plant arm, rushing to attack. When Zeke saw this, he quickly raised his sword across his chest to ward off the blow. It's really troublesome. In this case, having a mage would be great, Zeke thought quietly, while beginning to dodge the storm-like attacks from Varget, which made her feel even more satisfied. Haha, thinking back, Zeke, you are a good defender, so this much is nothing at all. In return, I'll add a bit more spice to fight you. After saying this, she immediately cut a wound on her own arm, causing blood to flow freely. Then she swung her arm forcefully forward, causing countless drops of blood to fly straight towards Zeke. But Zeke was very alert. As soon as he saw her do this, he immediately defended with his sword, imbued with mana, and struck forcefully forward, preventing the blood from reaching him. If exposed to the blood of the diseased, I would contract an unknown disease. If I were to recklessly strike her, I would surely get blood on me. Moreover, if I struck her, she would still be alive and continue to fight. It's not easy at all. The wound from earlier has not yet healed. It needs to be destroyed. Upon reaching this point, Zeke immediately transformed his attribute into fire form and charged directly at Varget, striking straight at her shoulder, causing her to cry out in pain. In that moment, her left arm bid farewell to its owner. "How does it feel, madam?" Zeke grinned. Meanwhile, Varget, after sensing her body again, clenched her teeth in disbelief. It wasn't her body. Could it regenerate? But as she pondered, she struggled with her remaining arm to push Zeke back. Despite her efforts, her situation remained dire. "Right now, my body can't regenerate anymore. Do I have to die here?" Thinking this, Varget dashed straight towards the window and flew outside. Meanwhile, Zeke hastily pursued her. "She wants to escape the castle, huh? Not happening. I have to deal with her before she gets outside. That's the only way to reduce the danger to the people. If the demon lord sees her, he'll surely mock her." Zeke thought silently, continuing his pursuit. At the same time, Varget fled frantically, cursing loudly. "Damn it, stop following me, you bitch! Get out of my way!" Her crude tone suited her well, to be honest. She looked truly disgusting. Zeke teased. Not long after, they both chased each other to the end of the road. And now, Varget had nowhere else to run. Seeing this, Zeke coldly remarked, "We're ending this chase now." With that, he covered his sword once again with mana fire. Seeing this, Varget quickly turned back and pleaded, "Wait, Zeke, let's negotiate." But before she could finish her sentence, a swift sword strike pierced through her chest, slowly incinerating her body. What was peculiar, though, was that the one wielding the flaming sword wasn't Zeke. Where did this flame sword come from? Zeke silently wondered, rushing over to check. Varget had died instantly. Was this magic caused by that person? But who exactly was that person? As Zeke pondered, he glanced towards a figure, not far away. Considering this, Zeke couldn't contain his curiosity any longer and asked, "Who are you? Are you a sorceress from the Draal clan?" On the opposite side, upon hearing Zeke's voice, the mysterious girl slowly emerged from the shadows, gracefully removing her head covering to reveal an exceptionally beautiful face. Her beauty was so captivating that even Zeke couldn't help but feel pleasantly surprised. "Oh, what a beauty!" he exclaimed inwardly. Before he could dwell on it further, the girl spoke up. "Zeke, is that you? Do you recognize me?" Zeke pointed to himself and asked, "Me?" Then he engaged his mind fully, pondering, had I met her at some lord's castle before? How could I forget such a face? The mysterious girl lowered her head slightly and murmured softly, "Forget it, you're not Zich Moore, are you?" The atmosphere suddenly shifted, leaving Zeke slightly bewildered. Zeke wondered inwardly and asked, "I thought you knew me. How do you know my name?" The mysterious girl then unexpectedly uttered a name, Zich Moore, our main character. Upon hearing this name, Zeke immediately launched into an attack without hesitation. However, his attack was blocked by a barrier of energy, a magical shield. The girl with white hair then expanded this shield, pushing Zeke back. At this moment, Zeke had some time to calmly think about everything. How does she know my name, when I no longer exist in this world as that name, as the Demon Lord? Who is she, and should I continue this conversation? Zeke questioned. Why do you know that name? Zeke asked aloud, but the girl with white hair remained silent, frustrating Zeke a bit. I guess she doesn't want to talk, he thought. Well, in that case, Zeke paused, then came up with an idea. If you don't want to answer, how about going on a date with me instead? I'm quite interested in you, he said with a smile. True to his expectations, this proposition visibly annoyed the girl in front of him. What a terrible way to flirt, she remarked, creating 4 magic formations around herself and immediately launching magical streams towards Zeke. Zeke saw that, so he quickly tilted his head to one side. However, the speed of this spell casting truly surprised him a bit. Before Zeke could react further, the girl in front started chanting some horn charm and launched a continuous assault, causing Zeke's scalp to tingle. She used spells to shorten the casting time, which reminded Zeke that she had created a magical shield. Therefore, condensing the spell was understandable. Zeke silently thought to himself while he was distracted. The protagonist had already been struck by a magical blow, sweeping across his leg, causing him to frown in pain. I was too complacent, Zeke muttered, then turned his face forward again and speculated, surely she's a high-level mage. But how can she use high-level magic at this age? While Zeke was still pondering, the white-haired girl in front began using a type of super magic, gathering countless energies together and launching them straight ahead, accompanied by numerous energetic blades. Seeing this, Zeke hurriedly swung his sword like a machine to ward off the entire attack. Next, Zeke leaped straight towards her and prepared to execute a sword strike technique, but the mage girl was not one to be trifled with. Immediately, she devised a countermeasure by using a magic to create a solid stone shield so tough that even Zeke's mana blade couldn't pierce through. A worthy opponent, Zeke gritted his teeth in thought, engaging in the battle. However, at that moment, the mage girl infused more magical force into the stone wall, causing it to thrust forward and knock Zeke back. Without giving our protagonist a chance to react, the white-haired girl immediately conjured a fireball spell and launched it directly towards him like a missile. What a hassle, Zeke thought silently as he saw the fireball rushing towards him. To counter this magic, Zeke quickly assumed a stance and hurled his sword straight towards it. In the moment when the sword stabbed into the fireball, it exploded horrendously, shattering Zeke's sword into several pieces. But at least it had diminished the power of the fireball. Zeke focused his magic power into his right arm, and with just one punch, he sent the spell flying back towards its caster. The spell's rebound was so powerful that even the energy shield created by the white-haired girl couldn't withstand it. The shattered fragments of the spell, along with the magic orb, injured the white-haired girl slightly. It's not working, huh? Great, she's getting angry, Zeke thought as he saw the frown on the white-haired girl's face. She started chanting another spell, but suddenly paused due to pain. Zeke immediately seized this moment, but right after, the girl completed a super powerful spell, creating a gigantic ice pillar aimed straight at him. However, this attack was still not enough to trouble him. With just one punch, he shattered the entire ice pillar. At this moment, he pondered, she just hesitated for a moment. How strange. A seasoned mage would continuously attack the enemy, but why did she hesitate like that? Of course, there were times when I just returned and hesitated as well. But that was because my body hadn't adapted to the battlefield experience yet. But this attack was too precise, and she even knows my name. Wait, could it be that she is also a regressor? If she is, then everything would make sense. But her movements are a bit strange for a regressor. She doesn't seem to have any resistance to injuries. Someone with combat skills as strong as hers should be used to getting hurt. It's hard to say for sure, but it seems like she absorbs damage with her body. Just as the battle was in progress, Joim's group hurriedly ran over and asked, "Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Hearing this, Zeke waved his hand and said, "It's nothing. Don't get caught up in this fight. You should step back." On the opposite side, the knight noticed the charred corpse in front and spoke up, Joim is over there. Upon hearing this, Joim quickly turned his gaze and shouted, Zeke, did you kill her? Our protagonist immediately denied it, it wasn't me. As he spoke, he glanced over at the white-haired girl, and Joim quickly caught this look and asked, if it wasn't you, then it was her, right? Yes, that's right. With just one attack, she's a high-level mage. Hearing this, the knight stepped forward and boldly stated, I'm not sure what happened, but she attacked you, so she is our enemy, right? Of course. Oh no, it was because I attacked her first, Zeke stammered after reflecting on everything. This left the knight in front dumbfounded. Seeing this, Zeke felt the need to explain, it's because she said some strange things. After saying this, Zeke reconsidered the situation and realized that the reason he attacked her was simply because she knew he was Zich Moore and had helped him deal with Varget. With this clarity, Zeke spoke up, this is my fault. I'm sorry. Now, can you tell me your name? On the opposite side, the white-haired girl didn't respond immediately, but asked in return, are they your teammates? Not exactly, are they teammates? The girl said in surprise, right. First of all, thank you for helping me deal with that woman. The village should be at peace now. However, before Zeke could finish his sentence, the girl spoke with a tone full of suspicion. No way, you care about the villagers. Turning to Zeke, after hearing this, he could confirm his thoughts. She really knew him from before the regression. The demon king Zich Moore, ha! While the two were growling and scrutinizing each other, the knight shouted, how dare you be disrespectful to Sir Zeke, the hero of Sprin? The white-haired girl looked confused and asked, the hero of Sprin? Him? Yes, Sir Zeke has helped this village, the knight said with a tone full of hatred. This made the girl begin to doubt her thoughts. Are you really Zich Moore? What's your last name? Does that matter? I'm just Zeke. I don't know how much you understand me, but my image in your mind isn't the same as me in real life. Zeke calmly replied, reminding himself that the current him was neither Zich Steelwill nor Zich Moore. Facing the white-haired girl, after a moment of contemplation, she muttered, no, it can't be that different. Her strange behavior caught Zeke's attention. I don't understand what she's saying anymore. It feels like a waste of time, he thought. Not wanting to waste any more time, he got straight to the point. If you don't reveal your identity, we'll consider you an intruder. At his words, the white-haired girl gently reached for her necklace, and then a surge of intense energy erupted from her, causing everyone to shield their eyes. What is that light? Someone shouted. In that moment of distraction, the girl vanished before their eyes, as if teleporting away. As for Zeke, he moved forward to examine the remnants of the magic left behind and speculated, using high-level magic to create an item is already impressive, and now she used the highest level of magic to teleport. How curious, I wonder who she is. Time quickly passed, and the next morning, at a gigantic bell tower, the group stood listening as Joim murmured, surely my father and brother can't ascend to heaven. The knight beside him agreed, saying, they must pay for their sins. They must have been preparing to atone. Atone? Joim thought for a moment and then turned to Zeke, saying, thank you for attending the funeral. Oh, it's nothing, they hurriedly replied. On this side, Joim recalled the events of last night and regretfully said, we should have sent a group after that mage. It's a pity. It's fine. She used an item to escape, so we couldn't chase her down. Zeke calmly replied, simultaneously considering his next plan. It seems she knows who I was in the past. I need to investigate. Meanwhile, Joim looked a bit sad and said, I heard you're leaving soon. Yes, we're just passing through here. Of course, we have to go, Zeke confirmed. Are you sure you don't want to work for us? I can guarantee excellent treatment. Joim attempted to persuade him. But Zeke immediately declined, no thanks. I don't like being tied down in one place. Besides, you can manage without me here. He smiled. However, Joim didn't agree. If it weren't for you, this land would be in danger. I can endure the bloody scenes on the battlefield, but when it all ends, I'll faint immediately. The Count of the Draal territory is afraid of blood. It's pathetic, isn't it? Feeling a bit defeated, Joim said this, and in response, Zeke reached into the pouch at his hip and pulled out a devil fruit. He then asked Joim, "Do you want to try this?" Joim, upon seeing the fruit, looked bewildered and said, "Isn't that the artifact from the prison?" Zeke nodded and replied, "I found it in the ruins. One day, your fear of blood might hinder you on your path to becoming the Lord of Draal. You'll need this. The bloodline will help you gain the power of blood." "The power of blood doesn't sound too good," Joim murmured. Zeke explained, "It will allow you to control the blood in your body at will. But if you become too greedy, it will drive you mad with bloodlust." Seeing this, Joim looked a bit scared and asked, "What if I start craving the blood of others? Is there a way to prevent that?" "Don't worry. If you turn into a bad person, I'll deal with you myself," Zeke assured with a smile. Time quickly passed. The scene shifts to the Lord's office. At this moment, Joim's close knight entered with a stack of papers and said, "My lord, there are more documents you need to review." "Just leave them there." Joim sighed and replied. The knight, seeing this, asked with concern, "You must be very tired." "If it were still like before, I would have been on the altar long ago. I never expected to miss the days when I was weak," Joim said. "So the bloodline truly has an effect. I'm glad to see you getting better. How does the bloodlust feel now?" Hearing this, Joim's expression brightened. "Sometimes I feel a slight craving, but it seems manageable as long as I don't try to control the blood of others." As he spoke, he drew a few drops of blood from his hand and made them float in the air. "So that's Hayol Yosel. How interesting," the knight said in surprise. Below, Joim thought to himself, "I've always practiced it, thinking there would come a day I'd need it for self-defense. But I wonder how Zeke knows these things. He never reveals his true identity." The knight, curious, remarked on this, but Joim brushed it off. "Does it really matter? He saved our town. That's all we need to know. Anyway, bravs, there's something I need you to investigate. Find out about the mage who attacked Zeke and his enemies." "Go," he said coldly. Turning to Zeke, he thought about the camp they were setting up somewhere. During this time, he couldn't shake thoughts of the mage. Who was that woman? She knew he was Zich Moore before his regression. Had he encountered anyone resembling her before? He wasn't yet proficient in that skill. She was at a level comparable to the Demon King of Curses. The Demon King, like Zeke, instilled fear in this world and could freely use various forms of magic. They had fought each other several times, but that old man was definitely a man. A very old one, at that. He couldn't recall who she was at all. How could he forget such a beautiful face? If that woman had regressed like him, she must be connected to the key that twists fate. Perhaps she was the one who implanted that item on him. But for now, it was just speculation. However, he couldn't shake the image of her face and expression from his mind. Why had she looked at him that way? The more Zeke thought about it, the more curious he became. Meanwhile, Hand beside him hesitantly spoke up. Zeke, about what you mentioned last time regarding Osprey. You prioritize dealing with Lady Varget first." As Hand scratched his head, Zeke immediately understood the situation. "You care about that, huh? I get it. It's difficult to justify such sacrifices. But let me ask you one question. Do you want to be a hero or a god? Even I, a genius, can't achieve everything I want. From the start, that was impossible. It's hard to accept, but you don't have to force yourself when making decisions. That will only make things worse." On the other side, Hand asked, "Do you really think I could become a hero?" At this question, the main character paused for a moment before responding, "Just do what you want. Since you're my subordinate, I'll do my best to help you." "Then is there any way to save more people?" Hand eagerly inquired. "There is, you just need to become stronger," Zeke replied with a smile. "So you mean I need to train more?" the fool remarked. Time quickly passed, and thus, the group's journey continued. During their travels, Zeke also made sure to train his two teammates. Currently, Snok was facing a pack of wolf monsters, and it seemed that after going through many battles, this once timid boy had become much braver. Even when confronting the monsters, he managed to stay calm and wait for the right moment. The hungry wolves, unable to control their hunger, leaped straight towards him, seeking a bit of flesh. Unfortunately for them, Snok was waiting for this opportunity. As soon as the wolves jumped into the air, Snok used his magic to create sharp stone pillars that shot up from the ground, piercing through the bodies of the ferocious creatures, causing them to collapse instantly. After finishing this, Snok let out a sigh of relief. At this point, there are still 2 wolf monsters left. However, it seems they are feeling a bit hesitant, so they don't dare to rush in and attack immediately, but are still hesitating. This is the opportunity for Han to take action. While they are still unsure whether to advance or retreat, he quietly approaches the monsters from behind and takes them down with just a few strikes. After doing this, Han sits down, breathing heavily. Meanwhile, Zeke slowly approaches and asks if it's all done. Han quickly turned around and said, "They're definitely dead." "But Zeke, why are there so many monsters here?" Snok nodded in agreement, saying, "I was wondering the same thing. There's even a village over there." After hearing the two, Zeke took notice and thought about how there really were a lot of monsters around. Could something be nearby? As Zeke glanced down at the corpse at his feet, he began to speculate. But at that moment, suddenly, rustling sounds came from in front of them, capturing the attention of all 3. From the bushes emerged an old man, fully equipped, who seemed to have observed Zeke's group during the battle. He began to propose, "You guys look strong. Could you lend me a hand?" The old man asked them to help deal with a group of orcs who monsters. "That's right, the ORCs live up in the mountains. Can you take care of them? If not handled thoroughly, those ORCs could harm travelers passing through the mountains." Following the old man's request, Zeke's group started searching for the green-skinned monsters. It didn't take long before they found the first clue, a gigantic footprint imprinted on the ground. Everyone hurriedly focused on the footprint and began examining it. "Look, Joim, it must have been an orcs that passed through here," Snok said worriedly. Han then glanced at Zeke and asked, "What if there's a whole pack of ORCs nearby?" "I don't know. We still need to find more of their tracks," Zeke replied calmly. At that moment, Snok raised a question. "Can you track them just from this footprint?" Zeke shook his head and replied, "I'm not very good at tracking." Han curiously asked, "So how do you plan to find them?" Under their expectant gazes, Zeke provided an unexpected answer. "Just look, listen, and feel. Come with me." Hearing this, Han and Snok sighed, deflating like a punctured balloon, realizing that Zeke didn't have any real plan. They expressed their disappointment, but of course, Zeke had his own reasoning behind those words. He thought, "I can't say I'm an expert tracker yet, but I know the basics. My senses can track quite a large area." With Han and Snok moving quickly, he was confident they would find the ORCs in the coming days. Zeke thought confidently, but at that moment, he witnessed something ahead that startled him, a figure that seemed like a living corpse. Through his eyes, he saw a small child approaching. Snok, seeing this from behind, worriedly remarked, "It's a child. What's a kid doing here?" Han added, "He looks so thin, like he's about to collapse." Zeke glanced towards the child and signaled. Han quickly understood and took out some food. Zeke then handed the boy a piece of bread, saying, "This is quite tasty, kid. Want to try some?" Time passed swiftly, and they continued their search, spending a night at an inn near the town. After a few days, they located the ORCs and their lair. With the strength of the whole group, defeating these monsters was incredibly easy. The old man who had requested their help, upon seeing the pile of ORC corpses, hurriedly said, "You really don't want to accept any payment." Zeke waved his hand dismissively and replied, "It's all right, this wasn't too difficult." In gratitude to the group, the townspeople hailed them as heroes and prepared a lavish feast for them. The boy they encountered on the mountain was now peeking outside the dining hall, and of course, this couldn't escape Rich's notice. He went outside to meet the boy. Zeke placed a hand on the boy's shoulder, startling him. "You always make me jump. Why do you do that?" the boy exclaimed in fear. At that moment, Zeke handed him a large piece of bread, saying, "Here, take this. You've helped me with good deeds." Zeke thought to himself. Meanwhile, the boy, seeing the bread, gently refused, saying, "I'm not here to beg. It's rude to refuse things from adults." Zeke smiled and replied, "But my mom told me not to take things from others. That's what bad people do." "So you're a good person then?" the boy asked curiously. In response, Zeke smiled and said, "Not really. I'm a bad person trying to do good." Then they found a quiet corner and continued their conversation. "Eating quickly like that can give you a stomach ache, you know." Zeke spoke up, reminding the boy while tossing him a water bottle, which he drank. At this moment, the main character noticed the bread in the boy's hands and asked, "Are you taking the rest home to your family?" "Yes, my parents have worked very hard," the boy replied as he took out a cloth and carefully wrapped up the bread. Zeke noticed this and praised him, saying, "You're very kind." "But didn't they say anything about you accepting food from me?" "No, they didn't say anything. Everyone in this town knows you're a good person. I heard you also took care of all the ORCs on the mountain." Hearing this, Zeke felt a chill. "A good person," he murmured, and then he remembered something. He turned to remind the boy beside him, "By the way, next time, just walk right into the inn. Don't linger outside like a thief." The boy looked down sadly and said, "If I go into places like that, I'll get scolded." I told him it was okay, so it will be fine. "Why are you so nice to me? Everyone else hates me." "Why are you nice to me?" the boy asked. Zeke spoke while beginning to reflect. Perhaps it was because of what someone had told him. It was the first time someone had reached out to help him without expecting anything in return, which was quite astonishing. Thinking this, Zeke calmly said, "Because I'm a bit better than those people, I guess." The boy beside him looked puzzled. "But you said you're a bad person trying to do good." "Well, let's say I'm a bad person trying to be better than a good person," Zeke defended himself, leaving the boy speechless. Then the boy burst into laughter, finding it all rather ridiculous. Seeing this, Zeke ruffled the boy's hair and smiled, saying, "There are always very strange people in this world, you know. I hope there are more people like you in the world. If so, it would be a wonderful place. It's getting late, so I'm heading home now. See you later," the boy said, waving goodbye to Zeke. Zeke smiled back, replying, "See you later. Wow, you're quick." He said this as he noticed the boy's figure had already disappeared behind him. Turning back toward the boy, he was happily thinking, "I think Mom and Dad will be very pleased, but I only took something from that older brother. I'll see him again tomorrow. At the very least, I need to ask his name. That way, someday I can repay him." As he thought about this, the boy noticed a few strange figures ahead and quickly stopped. "I don't recognize those people. Are they just passersby? What are they doing with each other?" Something felt off, and he decided it was best to leave. The boy thought to himself, as it seemed these people were involved in some shady dealings, and it would be best for him to slip away before trouble arose. Unfortunately, trouble had indeed come when a bald man in front started looking at him with an excited gaze and said, "There's a little mouse watching me from over there." The boy, seeing this, turned pale with fear and dropped the bag of food he was holding, letting it fall to the ground. Turning to Zeke, he was reminiscing about the boy from earlier. "Maybe next time, I should give that kid something other than bread. Now that I think about it, I don't even know his name. We've gotten pretty close, haven't we? I can just ask him tomorrow," Zeke thought to himself. Meanwhile, the boy he was thinking about was crying and running away from the bald man. Time quickly passed until the next morning, when Zeke's group had just defeated another group of ORCs. It seemed like this was the final group, so Han cheerfully turned and said, "So that's it, right, Zeke?" Snok added from beside him, "We checked the area we started from but only found these monsters." After hearing this, Zeke pondered for a moment. It doesn't seem like there will be any more coming. The predator population must have decreased. Perhaps the monsters migrated here due to the power imbalance in neighboring areas. The village will be safe from monsters and wild beasts for a while. Thinking this, Zeke cheerfully said, "All right then, let's get ready." Before continuing their journey, they went to bid farewell to the villagers and the mayor. The old man, seeing them, quickly shook their hands and thanked them profusely, saying, "I don't know how to repay you for saving us." Hand puffed up his chest and replied, "It's nothing really. No need to act so dramatic." Zeke chuckled, and over here, Snok glanced around and asked, "But today, I don't see that kid. Every time we come to the village, he's always around here. I wanted to see him before we left." Zeke thought to himself about this. Meanwhile, some villagers started looking at each other and said, "Are you talking about the boy who lives over there by the fence? Now that you mention it, I haven't seen him in 2 days. He usually comes here quite often." Han speculated, he might have gone to help in another village perhaps. But it's concerning that no one has seen him. Snok expressed his worry. As for Zeke, rather than overthinking it, he decided to find out what happened. "Let's go," he said. Zeke spoke as he turned to leave, while the two behind were still unaware of his intentions, asking, "Where are we going? Do you have a place in mind already?" "No, we're going to the boy's house," Zeke replied. Following the directions from the villagers, Zeke's group found the boy's home. However, upon arrival, they stared in confusion. "Are we in the right place? Is someone really living here? This place is a complete mess," Han and Snok said in astonishment. In front, Zeke began to use his magic to sense the area. "I don't feel anyone here," he thought. Could something have happened to the boy? As he pondered, he amplified his magic and spread it throughout the surroundings. Suddenly, Zeke realized something and rushed forward, leaving Han and Snok in shock. "Where are you going, Zeke?" they called out as they hurried after him. Soon, guided by his instincts, Zeke found himself standing before a dilapidated house, where a person was slowly dying. He thought for a moment and then pushed open the door, revealing a scene that sent chills down his spine. Inside, 2 bodies lay still in a pool of blood, 2 dead, and one of them was the boy. Zeke thought as he looked towards the remaining life force, and was genuinely surprised to find that the person there was none other than the boy they were searching for. The boy was sitting quietly against the wall, as if sleeping, with a strange tattoo on his chest. Seeing this, Zeke quickly ran over and called out, "Hey, wake up!" As he spoke, Zeke hurriedly considered that the boy was still breathing. "If I give him medicine," Zeke thought, noticing the tattoo on the boy's chest. Our main character immediately sensed an energy beginning to emanate from this tattoo. Meanwhile, the boy, upon hearing another voice, slowly woke up and said, "Yes, it's me. I came to meet you because I couldn't find you anywhere." Zeke began to inquire about what had happened. What happened? Who did this? The boy, with tears in his eyes, replied, "I don't know. A stranger I've never seen before suddenly appeared at night and killed my father, then my mother too. He said that he would let them live if I didn't scream. It was very painful, but I tried to endure. So he had said that he wouldn't kill the boy's parents if the boy remained silent during the torture. But in the end, he still killed them, taking pleasure in the tragedy." As Zeke thought more, his gaze became colder. The boy, unable to hold back his tears, began to tremble, sobbing. "After he killed my parents, he also killed others. He said it was all my fault," the boy said, tears streaming down his face. In response, Zeke gently patted the boy's head and reassured him, "Don't worry, it's not your fault. Did you see his face? He was bald and he had strange tattoos covering half his face," the boy replied, his voice trailing off as he hugged his chest tightly. Seeing this, Zeke quickly enveloped his right arm with magic and touched the boy's tattoo. With a mysterious method, the tattoo on the boy's chest vanished completely. "You did very well. I'll take care of the rest for you," Zeke said. "Thank you, sir," the boy softly replied, his eyes gradually glazing over as his arm dropped weakly. The boy's condition was uncertain, hovering between life and death. Noticing this, Zeke took a loaf of bread from his food pouch and placed it in the boy's hand. Meanwhile, Han and Snot had arrived, their faces pale at the sight inside. Zeke, determined, then stated their next target for the journey. "Let's go. We will meet someone who can help us take revenge for that child." As he spoke, he recalled the image of a blonde girl